Have you ever felt stuck, like no matter how much effort you put in, things just don't seem to change? Maybe you're working hard, but instead of moving forward, you feel like you're running in circles. It's exhausting, isn't it? And sometimes it feels like you're the only one going through it. The truth is, you're not alone. Everyone faces moments like this, and it's not because you're not trying hard enough. It's often because of habits we develop without even realizing it. Habits that quietly keep us stuck in the same frustrating cycle. But here's the good news. Those habits aren't permanent. They're not who you are. And with the right mindset, you can change them. In this video, we're going to look at 7 common habits that hold people back. And more importantly, how to overcome them using some timeless principles from Stoic philosophy. Now, if you're not familiar with Stoicism, don't worry. It's not some rigid or outdated way of thinking. Stoicism is a practical approach to life that's about focusing on what you can control and letting go of what you can't. It's about finding clarity and building resilience, no matter what challenges you're facing. Before we start, I'd really appreciate it if you could support this video by liking it. It helps spread these ideas and reach more people who might need them. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. And as we go through these habits, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have any of these patterns shown up in your life? What have you done to work through them? Your story could inspire someone else. As we go through each habit, remember this: you don't have to fix everything all at once. Even small changes can make a big difference. What matters is taking that first step and building from there. So let's begin. Together we'll uncover what's been holding you back and explore how you can break free. Habit number 1, procrastination, the habit of avoidance. Let's talk about procrastination, the habit that keeps so many of us stuck in place. Have you ever put something off, telling yourself you'll do it later, only to feel that nagging regret afterward? Maybe it's an important project, a personal goal, or even just a small task that's been lingering on your to-do list for weeks. We convince ourselves there's plenty of time, but deep down, we know that delay is holding us back. The truth is, procrastination isn't just about being lazy or unmotivated. It's often about fear of failure, fear of discomfort, or even fear of success. And the longer we delay, the bigger that task seems to grow in our minds. It becomes this immovable barrier, one we'd rather avoid than confront. But here's the thing: the time we spend avoiding the task is often more painful than actually doing it. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic thinkers, reminds us of the value of the present moment. He said, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." It's a sobering thought, but also an empowering one. It reminds us that time is our most precious resource, and procrastination is like throwing that resource away, moment by moment. Now, I know this sounds heavy, but it's not about being perfect. It's about recognizing that every small action we take today brings us closer to where we want to be tomorrow. And sometimes the hardest part is just getting started. Think about this. How many times have you avoided a task only to feel relief once you finally sat down and did it? That's because action, no matter how small, has a way of breaking the cycle. It creates momentum, and momentum is powerful. So how do we overcome procrastination? Let's make it practical. One of the best ways is to break tasks into smaller, more manageable steps. When a project feels overwhelming, it's easy to avoid it altogether. But when you focus on just the first step, like writing one sentence, making one phone call, or even setting up your workspace, you're already making progress. That first small win builds confidence and makes the next step easier. Another strategy is setting priorities. Not everything on your list is equally important. Ask yourself, what's the one thing I can do today that will make the biggest difference? Tackle that first. It might not be the easiest task, but it's often the one that brings the most relief once it's done. And finally, let's talk about the fear of failure. This is a big reason people procrastinate. They're afraid of not doing something perfectly. But here's the truth. Perfection isn't the goal. Progress is. The Stoics teach us to focus on the process, not the outcome. Marcus Aurelius also said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This reminds us to focus on what's within our control, our effort, our honesty, and our willingness to act. The results will take care of themselves. Let me give you a relatable example. Imagine you've been avoiding starting a fitness routine. Every day you tell yourself, "I'll start tomorrow." Weeks pass, and now the idea of working out feels even harder because you've built it up in your mind. But what if you told yourself, "I'm just going to do 5 minutes today"? That's it, 5 minutes. You'd probably find that once you start, 5 minutes turns into 10 and then 20. And even if it doesn't, you've still taken a step forward. That's what matters. So here's my question for you. What's one thing you've been putting off that you can start today? It doesn't have to be big, just something small and manageable. Share it in the comments if you're comfortable. You might inspire someone else who's struggling with the same thing. Remember, procrastination doesn't define you. It's just a habit, and like any habit, it can be unlearned. Every moment you choose to take action, no matter how small, is a moment you reclaim your time and your power. And that's a step worth taking. Habit number 2, blaming others, the habit of externalizing responsibility. Let's talk about something we've all done at some point, blaming others. Maybe it's a coworker who didn't pull their weight on a project, a friend who let you down, or circumstances that just feel unfair. It's easy to point the finger when things don't go as planned. After all, it feels good in the moment to say, "It's not my fault." But here's the hard truth. When we shift the blame to others, we give away our power to change. Think about it. Every time we blame someone or something else for our situation, we're essentially saying, "I can't do anything about this." We're placing control outside ourselves, and in doing so, we stay stuck. That's the trap of externalizing responsibility. It feels comforting in the short term, but in the long term, it keeps us from moving forward. Stoic philosophy has a powerful reminder for situations like this. While we can't control what happens to us, we can always control how we respond. Epictetus, a Stoic teacher, said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This isn't about ignoring the role others play in our lives. It's about recognizing that our reactions are within our control. And that's where true power lies. Let me give you a relatable example. Imagine you're working on a group project and one person doesn't do their share. It's frustrating, right? You're left picking up the slack, and it's tempting to focus all your energy on how unfair the situation is. But think about what happens when you stay in that mindset. You feel angry, helpless, and stuck. Now let's flip the perspective. What if, instead of dwelling on what they didn't do, you focus on what you can do? Maybe you take the lead, complete the project, and prove to yourself that you can handle challenges with grace. That shift from blaming to acting is where growth happens. Now, I know this isn't easy. Taking responsibility means looking in the mirror and asking tough questions. What role did I play in this? How can I respond better next time? It's not about taking the blame for things outside your control. It's about focusing on what you can change moving forward. One of the best ways to develop this mindset is through journaling. At the end of each day, take a few minutes to reflect. Ask yourself, what went well today? What didn't? And what could I have done differently? This practice builds self-awareness and helps you recognize patterns in your thoughts and behaviors. Here's another common scenario. Maybe you've been feeling stuck in your career. It's easy to blame the economy, your boss, or even bad luck. But let's pause and reflect. Are there small actions you could take to move forward? Could you learn a new skill, network with others, or explore different opportunities? When you stop focusing on what's outside your control and start acting on what's within it, you begin to reclaim your power. Now let me ask you this. Have you ever blamed someone else for a situation and later realized you could have handled it differently? If you feel comfortable, share your experience in the comments. Your story might resonate with someone who's going through something similar. The Stoics understood that life isn't always fair and people don't always act the way we'd like. But their philosophy teaches us that blaming others won't change what's already happened. What can change is how we choose to move forward, and that choice is entirely in our hands. So the next time you catch yourself pointing the finger, take a step back. Ask yourself, what's one thing I can do right now to improve this situation? It might not fix everything, but it will remind you that you're not powerless, and that's a step worth taking. Habit number 3, overthinking, the habit of inaction. Let's talk about overthinking. You know that moment when you're trying to make a decision and your mind just won't stop spinning. You think about every possible outcome, every potential problem, and before you know it, hours or even days have passed and you're still stuck. It's exhausting, isn't it? And yet it feels like if you just think a little more, maybe you'll find the perfect answer. But here's the truth. Overthinking doesn't lead to clarity. It leads to anxiety and inaction. The more we analyze, the more we paralyze ourselves. We get so caught up in trying to avoid mistakes that we forget the most important step, taking action. The Stoics had a lot to say about this. They believed that instead of overthinking, we should focus on what's within our control and let go of the rest. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." It's such a simple idea, but also incredibly freeing. When you let go of the need to control every outcome, you give yourself permission to act without fear of perfection. Let me ask you this. How many times have you replayed a situation in your mind, wondering if you made the right choice? Maybe it was something as small as sending an email, or as big as deciding on a career move. The longer you think about it, the harder it becomes to act, because you've built up so much pressure around making the perfect decision. But here's the thing. There's no such thing as a perfect decision. There are only decisions and the actions you take afterward. So, how do we break free from the cycle of overthinking? One powerful tool is something called the circle of control. It's simple but effective. Imagine drawing 2 circles on a piece of paper. In the inner circle, write down everything you can control, your actions, your effort, your mindset. In the outer circle, list the things you can't control, other people's opinions, external circumstances, or random outcomes. When you're feeling overwhelmed, take a step back and ask yourself, am I focusing on the right circle? This exercise helps you shift your energy toward what you can actually influence, rather than wasting time on things you can't. Another strategy is journaling. When your thoughts feel like a tangled mess, writing them down can be incredibly clarifying. Start by asking yourself a simple question. What's the worst that could happen if I make this decision? Often, you'll realize that the consequences aren't nearly as catastrophic as you imagined. And even if they are, you'll also see that you're capable of handling them. Writing things out helps you see the situation for what it is, not for the exaggerated version your mind has created. Let me share an example. Imagine you're considering starting a new hobby, but you keep hesitating because you're worried you won't be good at it. You tell yourself, what if I look foolish? What if people judge me? Days go by, and you still haven't signed up for that class or tried that new activity. But what if, instead, you focused on what you can control? Your willingness to try, your openness to learning. You might discover that taking the first step is less scary than you thought. And even if you're not perfect, you've gained something valuable, experience, growth, and maybe even a little fun. Now, I want you to take a moment to reflect. Is there something you've been overthinking lately? A decision, a project, or maybe even a conversation you've been avoiding? What's one small action you can take today to move forward? Share it in the comments if you feel comfortable. Your story might inspire someone else to take that first step. Overthinking isn't about laziness or a lack of effort. It's about fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown. But the Stoics remind us that fear loses its grip when we focus on what we can control and act with courage. Action is the antidote to overthinking. So the next time you find yourself caught in the endless loop of analysis, remember this: clarity comes from action, not more thinking. Take a step, no matter how small, and trust yourself to handle whatever comes next. You're stronger than you think, and every action you take brings you closer to the life you want to build. Habit number 4, comparing yourself to others, the habit of envy. Let's face it, comparison is a trap we've all fallen into. You see someone's success, their perfect vacation photos, or their seemingly flawless life, and suddenly you're questioning your own progress. You start to think, why don't I have that? Why am I not there yet? It's exhausting, isn't it? And more than that, it's draining. Comparing yourself to others doesn't just steal your happiness, it steals your energy and focus too. The problem with comparison is that it creates a false standard. What we're often looking at are the highlights of someone else's life, not the whole picture. Meanwhile, we're painfully aware of our own struggles and flaws. It's an unfair game, and yet it's one we often play without even realizing it. The Stoics understood this tendency and had a better way of thinking. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't set your mind on things you don't possess as if they were yours, but count the blessings you actually possess and think how much you would desire them if they weren't already yours." It's a beautiful reminder to focus on what's truly ours, our progress, our values, our unique journey. Think about it this way: what good does it do to compare yourself to someone else's timeline? Their path isn't yours. Their struggles, their opportunities, their circumstances, they're all different. By focusing on their journey, you lose sight of your own. And that's the real tragedy of comparison. It takes your attention away from what actually matters, your growth and your goals. Let me give you a relatable example. Imagine you're scrolling through social media and you see a friend's post about buying a new house or landing a dream job. You feel a pang of envy, even though you might not even want what they have. That's the thing about comparison. It's not about what you genuinely value. It's about measuring yourself against someone else's milestones. But what if, instead of feeling envy, you took a moment to reflect on what's going well in your own life? What if you shifted your focus to gratitude for what you've achieved and what you're working toward? Gratitude is one of the most powerful antidotes to comparison. When you start to feel that creeping envy, pause and ask yourself, what am I grateful for right now? Write it down if you can. It makes it more tangible. You might realize that while someone else's life looks amazing on the surface, you have things in your own life that are just as valuable. Gratitude shifts your perspective and helps you appreciate the present moment. Another way to break free from comparison is to focus on your personal goals and values. What truly matters to you? Not to your friends, not to society, but to you. When you set goals that align with your values, you stop chasing what others have and start building a life that's meaningful to you. And here's the beauty of it: when you're focused on your own path, you have less time and energy to worry about what others are doing. Self-reflection is also key. Take some time to ask yourself, why am I comparing myself to this person? What does this say about my own insecurities or desires? Sometimes comparison can be a signal that there's something you want to work on in your life. But instead of letting it drag you down, use it as motivation to grow. For example, if you feel envious of someone's fitness journey, ask yourself how you can take small steps to improve your own health. Let it inspire you, not defeat you. Now, let's get interactive. Think of one area where you've been comparing yourself to someone else. It could be your career, relationships, finances, anything. What's one step you can take today to shift your focus back to your own progress? Share it in the comments if you're comfortable. You might find that someone else is struggling with the exact same thing, and your story could help them too. Here's something I want you to remember. Comparison is a habit, and like any habit, it can be changed. The next time you catch yourself falling into the trap, pause. Reflect on what you're grateful for. Focus on your own values and goals, and remind yourself that someone else's success doesn't take away from your own. The Stoics teach us that true happiness comes from within, from living a life that's aligned with our values, not from measuring ourselves against others. When you let go of comparison, you free up space to focus on what truly matters, and that's where real growth happens. Habit number 5, chasing comfort, the habit of avoiding adversity. Let's talk about comfort. It's something we all crave. It's warm, safe, and predictable. But here's the catch. Staying in your comfort zone for too long can hold you back. Sure, it feels good in the moment to avoid challenges or steer clear of discomfort, but over time, that habit keeps you stuck. Growth doesn't happen when everything feels easy. It happens when you face adversity and push through it. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." They believed that the path to a stronger, more resilient self lies in embracing discomfort, not running from it. And while that might sound daunting, it's actually one of the most empowering lessons you can learn. Think about this. When was the last time you avoided doing something hard because it felt too overwhelming? Maybe it was a tough conversation you didn't want to have, a workout you skipped, or an opportunity you passed up because you weren't sure you'd succeed. In the moment, avoiding the challenge might have felt like the easier option. But afterward, didn't it leave you with a lingering sense of regret? That's the trap of chasing comfort. It protects you temporarily, but robs you of long-term growth. Here's the thing. Discomfort isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. Every time you face a challenge, you're building resilience. It's like lifting weights. Each rep makes you stronger, even though it feels hard in the moment. And the more you practice stepping into discomfort, the easier it becomes to handle adversity when it comes your way. One powerful way to build this resilience is through voluntary discomfort. The idea is simple. Put yourself in controlled situations where you experience discomfort intentionally. Why? Because it trains your mind to see challenges as something you can handle rather than something to fear. For example, you could try fasting for a day, taking cold showers, or spending a few hours without your phone. These small acts of discomfort might seem trivial, but they teach you an important lesson. You're capable of enduring more than you think. Let me share an example. Imagine you decide to take a cold shower every morning for a week. The first time, it feels unbearable. Your body wants to jump out, and your mind is screaming, "Why are you doing this to me?" But as the week goes on, something shifts. You start to realize that while it's uncomfortable, it's also manageable. By the end of the week, you've not only built physical resilience, but also mental strength. You've proven to yourself that you can face discomfort and come out stronger on the other side. Another way to embrace discomfort is to reframe how you think about failure. Instead of seeing it as something to avoid, see it as a stepping stone to success. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the very obstacles you face are what push you forward. When you stop avoiding failure and start learning from it, you turn adversity into an opportunity for growth. Now, I know this can feel overwhelming. It's not easy to step out of your comfort zone. It's called a comfort zone for a reason. But you don't have to overhaul your life overnight. Start small. Pick one area where you've been avoiding discomfort and challenge yourself to take just one step. Maybe it's having that conversation you've been putting off, trying a new skill you're afraid you'll fail at, or even pushing through a tough workout. The important thing is to start. Here's something to reflect on. What's one area in your life where chasing comfort has held you back? Maybe it's a dream you've postponed, a habit you've struggled to break, or a challenge you've avoided. What's one small action you can take today to step into that discomfort? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your story, and it might just inspire someone else to take their first step too. Remember, comfort isn't bad in itself. It's when we prioritize it over growth that it becomes a problem. The Stoics remind us that facing challenges isn't just about building resilience. It's about becoming the best version of ourselves. Every time you step into discomfort, you're choosing growth over stagnation, courage over fear. And that's a choice worth making. Habit number 6, fear of failure, the habit of avoiding risk. Let's talk about failure. Just hearing the word might make you feel uneasy. Failure is something most of us try to avoid at all costs. It's scary, isn't it? The fear of getting it wrong, of looking foolish, of falling short. It can feel paralyzing. But here's the ironic thing. Avoiding failure doesn't keep you safe, it keeps you stuck. Think about it. How many opportunities have you let slip by because you were too afraid to take the risk? Maybe it was applying for a job you really wanted but didn't think you were qualified for, or starting that side hustle you've always dreamed of but worried might not succeed. The fear of failure whispers in our ears, what if you mess up? What if people judge you? And so, we stay in our comfort zones, where it feels safe, but nothing changes. The Stoics had a completely different way of looking at failure. To them, failure wasn't something to fear, it was something to embrace. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the obstacles we face, including failure, aren't roadblocks. They're the path forward. Each failure teaches us something we couldn't have learned otherwise. Let's take a moment to reflect on this with an example. Think about Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulb. It's said that he failed over 1,000 times before he finally got it right. When asked about his failures, he reportedly said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That mindset, seeing failure as part of the process rather than the end of the road, is exactly what the Stoics would encourage. Now, I know it's easier said than done. The fear of failure feels so real in the moment, but here's a question to consider. What's the worst that could happen if you fail? And more importantly, what's the best that could happen if you succeed? So often, we let our fear of the worst-case scenario overshadow the possibilities waiting on the other side of risk. The truth is, most failures aren't as catastrophic as we imagine them to be. They're uncomfortable, yes, but they're also temporary, and they're often the best teachers. So how do we overcome the fear of failure? One powerful way is to start small, take risks that feel manageable, and build from there. Maybe you're afraid to speak up in a meeting at work. Start by sharing one idea, just one. Over time, as you build confidence, you'll find that what once felt terrifying becomes second nature. Another strategy is reframing how you think about failure. Instead of seeing it as proof that you're not good enough, see it as evidence that you're trying. Every time you fail, you're learning what doesn't work and getting closer to what does. Journal about your failures, not to dwell on them, but to celebrate what they taught you. Ask yourself, what did I learn from this experience? How will it help me grow? Let me share another example to put this into perspective. Think about J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series. Before her success, she faced rejection after rejection from publishers. At one point, she was living on welfare, struggling to support her child as a single mother. She could have given up, and no one would have blamed her, but she didn't. She learned from her setbacks, kept improving her manuscript, and eventually, the rest is history. Her story reminds us that failure isn't final. It's just a stepping stone. Now let me ask you this. Is there something in your life you've been avoiding because you're afraid to fail? A dream you've put on hold, an opportunity you've passed up, or a goal you've convinced yourself is too far out of reach. Take a moment to reflect on it. And here's the challenge. What's one small step you can take today to move closer to it? Share it in the comments if you're comfortable. I'd love to hear your story, and it might just inspire someone else to take their own leap. The Stoics remind us that life is full of uncertainties and failure is inevitable. But what matters isn't whether you fail, it's how you respond to it. Will you let it define you, or will you let it refine you? The choice is yours. Remember, every success story is built on a foundation of failures. The light bulb, Harry Potter, and even your favorite successes in life, they all started with someone willing to take a risk and learn from what didn't work. So don't let the fear of failure stop you. Take the risk, embrace the lessons, and trust yourself to handle whatever comes next. Because you're capable of more than you think. Habit number 7. Neglecting reflection. The habit of living without intention. Have you ever had one of those days where everything seems to blur together, and by the end of it, you can't even remember what you actually accomplished? It's as if the day just happened to you, instead of you actively shaping it. When we neglect reflection, this becomes more than an occasional occurrence. It becomes a way of life. And that's how we get stuck in unproductive cycles, repeating the same mistakes and missing the opportunity to grow. The Stoics knew the power of self-reflection. They believed that taking the time to examine your actions, thoughts, and decisions was essential for personal growth. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Reflecting on your day helps you separate imagined fears from real ones and align your actions with your values. Without it, life can feel like a ship without a rudder, drifting aimlessly, without direction. Here's something to think about. How often do you pause and ask yourself, what went well today, what didn't, and what can I do better tomorrow? These simple questions might seem small, but they can have a profound impact on your life. Reflection allows you to break free from autopilot mode and live with greater intention. Let me give you an example. Imagine you've been feeling stuck in your career, but instead of examining what's holding you back, you bury yourself in distractions, scrolling through social media, binge-watching TV, or diving into busy work. Without reflection, those feelings of dissatisfaction don't just go away, they build up, leaving you even more frustrated. But what if, at the end of each day, you took just 5 minutes to journal? You might realize that what's holding you back isn't your job itself, but the fear of taking the next step. Awareness is the first step toward change. Journaling is one of the most practical tools for reflection. It's not about writing a novel, it's about putting your thoughts on paper so you can see them clearly. Start simple. Each night, jot down 3 things. Number 1, what went well today? Number 2, what didn't go as planned? Number 3, what's one thing I can do differently tomorrow? These questions create a roadmap for growth. Over time, you'll start to notice patterns, habits that serve you and ones that hold you back. And with that awareness, you can begin to make intentional changes. The Stoics also emphasize the importance of reflecting on your values. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often asked himself if he was living according to his principles. He didn't just think about what he did, he thought about why he did it. This kind of reflection helps you stay aligned with what truly matters, rather than getting caught up in distractions or chasing things that don't bring real fulfillment. Let's make this interactive. Think about your own life for a moment. Is there an area where you've been on autopilot, just going through the motions without really considering why? Maybe it's your daily routine, your relationships, or your career. What's one small step you can take today to reflect more intentionally? If you feel comfortable, share it in the comments. Your insight might inspire someone else to start reflecting too. Reflection doesn't have to be time-consuming or overwhelming. It's about creating small moments of mindfulness in your day. For example, you could spend 5 minutes journaling in the evening, or even take a quiet walk and think about how your day went. The goal isn't to criticize yourself, it's to learn and grow. Now you might be thinking, I don't have time to reflect every day. But here's the thing, reflection actually saves you time in the long run. When you take a few moments to assess what's working and what isn't, you can make better decisions moving forward. It's like fine-tuning a car engine. It keeps you running smoothly instead of breaking down when you least expect it. The Stoics remind us that an unexamined life leads to stagnation, while a reflective life leads to growth. Seneca wrote, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." And that's what reflection is all about. It's not about being perfect, it's about being better than you were yesterday. So here's my challenge for you. Tonight, before you go to bed, take 5 minutes to reflect. Write down one thing you're proud of, one thing you'd like to improve, and one step you'll take tomorrow to move forward. It doesn't have to be big. Small steps add up over time. The key is to start. Remember, neglecting reflection isn't just about missing out on personal growth. It's about missing the chance to live intentionally. When you take the time to reflect, you gain clarity, direction, and a deeper connection to yourself. And that's how you break free from unproductive cycles and start living a life that's truly yours. We've explored 7 habits that can keep you stuck in a cycle of failure, and more importantly, how you can break free. From procrastination and blaming others to overthinking and chasing comfort, these are challenges we all face at some point. And while they might seem overwhelming at times, the key takeaway is this: change is always possible. The Stoics remind us that while we can't control everything in life, we can control our choices, our actions, and how we respond to the challenges we face. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength is what allows us to take back control, step by step. Here's the thing, breaking these habits isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Each small action you take, no matter how insignificant it might feel, is a step forward. Maybe today, it's deciding to act instead of procrastinating. Maybe tomorrow, it's reflecting on your decisions instead of staying on autopilot. These moments of choice add up, creating momentum that propels you toward the life you want. Let me ask you this. Which of these habits resonated with you the most? Was there a specific one that hit close to home? Take a moment to think about it. What's one small action you can take today to start shifting that habit? If you're comfortable, share it in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and your story might inspire someone else who's working through the same challenges. Stoic philosophy teaches us that failure isn't the end, it's a teacher. Every setback, every mistake, every obstacle is an opportunity to learn and grow. Think about how empowering that is. Instead of fearing failure, you can embrace it as part of your journey. Instead of being paralyzed by the unknown, you can take risks, knowing that you'll be stronger no matter the outcome. Remember, these habits don't define you. They're just patterns that can be broken with awareness, intention, and action. Whether it's practicing gratitude, reflecting through journaling, or stepping into discomfort, the tools are there for you to use. And with each tool you pick up, you're building a stronger, more resilient version of yourself. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with this thought. You are capable of so much more than you realize. The fact that you're here, watching this video, thinking about these habits, and considering how to change, that alone is a powerful first step. Give yourself credit for that. Growth doesn't happen overnight, but it happens when you show up consistently, even in small ways. If you found value in this video, I'd really appreciate it if you could give it a thumbs up. It helps spread these ideas to more people who might need them. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future videos like this. I'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Which habit are you going to work on first? Or is there another challenge you'd like us to explore in a future video? Let me know. I read every comment, and your input helps shape this channel. As we close, I want to thank you for spending this time with me. Reflection, growth, and change take courage, and the fact that you're here shows you're ready for it. So take that next step, whatever it looks like for you. And remember, the journey isn't about being perfect, it's about becoming the best version of yourself, one small step at a time. You've got this. Until next time, take care and keep moving forward.